Some of the moments behind bars are too disturbing to ignore, especially when they're caught on camera. These aren't just prison fights or inmate meltdowns. From a woman pepper sprayed while restrained, to a 60-year-old slammed to the ground for asking for milk, to a failed ceiling escape that ended in a trash can, these are scenes that leave you stunned. What you're about to watch reveals the chaos that lives deep inside correctional walls. And at these moments, the cameras never blink. Chantelle Glass.
I can't breathe.
If you're talking, you can breathe.
I can't breathe.
In July 2018, inside the walls of Cuyahoga County Jail in Cleveland, Ohio, a moment of shocking cruelty was caught on camera. The inmate at the center of it all was Chantelle Glass. She wasn't rioting, she wasn't armed, she wasn't even able to move. She had been strapped tightly into a restraint chair, arms tied, legs locked, chest bound. She was completely defenseless, and that's when Officer Idris Clark walked in. What happened next would haunt everyone who saw the footage. Miss Glass sat still, clearly distressed but unable to move. Officer Clark stood in front of her with something in his hand, a can of pepper foam. This isn't your typical pepper spray. Pepper foam is dense, chemical-laced, and designed to inflict intense burning pain. It's only supposed to be used in emergencies where all other options have failed. Clark didn't hesitate. He raised the can, aimed it at her face, and sprayed. The foam hit her directly in the eyes, nose, and mouth. She started screaming immediately. The burning sensation overwhelmed her, but she had nowhere to go. She couldn't wipe it off. She couldn't shield herself. She couldn't even turn her face away. Her body jerked, but the straps held her in place. An officer, Robert Marsh, standing nearby, didn't stop it. Instead, he allegedly struck her while she was still restrained. The two officers working inside a jail meant to uphold justice were now at the center of an act that looked more like torture than control. But they weren't alone in that room. Security cameras mounted high in the walls captured every second, not just from one angle, but from two. One camera caught the foam being sprayed. Another showed the woman's body convulsing in pain. Her cries echoed through the footage. The video made its way to the public, and when it did, outrage followed like a storm.
And the video shows Defendant Marsh jumping on that instinctual reaction to hit Ms. Glass. He could have easily stepped back.
People couldn't believe what they were saying. Human rights groups called it barbaric. Civil rights lawyers called it unconstitutional. The woman had no way to defend herself. Yet, she was treated like a threat. News outlets across the country picked up the story. Headlines filled the internet. The public was furious. The video didn't show an isolated incident. It showed a failure in everything the justice system is supposed to stand for. Soon, the Ohio Attorney General's office stepped in. A full investigation was launched, and it didn't take long for charges to come down. Not just against Clark and Marsh, but against 3 other officers as well. 5 total. The charges included felonious assault, unlawful restraint, and interference with civil rights. These weren't light accusations. They were serious, and they reflected the severity of what had happened.
And this transcript then sent to other people in the justice system to make sure more eyes are taking a hard look inside the lockup.
But this incident wasn't just about one woman and 2 officers. It was a mirror showing the cracks in the entire system. Because Cuyahoga County Jail had already been under fire. Just months before this, U.S. Marshals had conducted a surprise inspection and released a scathing report. They found the jail to be overcrowded, filthy, and dangerous. There were insect infestations in the food. Inmates were being denied medical treatment. Some were left in cells filled with human waste. At least 8 inmates had died in the facility within a year. The pepper spray video wasn't an isolated incident, it was the boiling point. What made the incident even more heartbreaking was the silence from those in power. For a long time, jail officials refused to comment. The woman's name wasn't released. There were no public apologies, no press conferences. Only the video stood as evidence, undeniable, unavoidable, and seared into the minds of everyone who watched it. As the legal process moved forward, many ask why it took a video going viral for action to be taken. Why had no one inside that jail spoken up sooner? Why did it take national outrage to get charges filed? And how many other incidents like this have happened without cameras, without justice, without a voice? Officer Idris Clark was eventually indicted for assaulting the restrained woman with pepper foam. Officer Robert Marsh, already under fire for unlawfully restraining inmates, faced his own set of charges. But while Chantelle's screams echoed in a silent room, another woman's escape attempt would echo across the internet for an entirely different reason. Jessica Boomershine.
She waits for a while with no one paying attention and then climbs up on top of the monitor. A brief 30-second pause then, while she presumably moves a ceiling tile out of the way, and then, with other inmates now watching closely, climbs up and out of sight.
In January 2020, inside the Montgomery County Jail in Dayton, Ohio, 42-year-old Jessica Boomershine attempted a daring escape that quickly turned into a scene of unexpected comedy. Surveillance cameras captured every moment, and the footage soon spread widely, showcasing her ill-fated attempt. Jessica had been arrested days earlier, accused of a serious crime involving an elderly man. She had an accomplice, were charged with kidnapping and assaulting an 85-year-old man they met at a local casino. According to reports, after gaining his trust, they allegedly broke into his home, took his gun, forced him to reveal his bank card PIN, withdrew money from his account, and then confined him in the trunk of his own car. They eventually abandoned the vehicle near a recycling center where the man managed to escape and seek help. Now in custody, Jessica found herself in a holding room of the county jail awaiting her court appearance. The room was typical, plain walls, a few chairs, and a kiosk with an unattached seat. But Jessica's mind was racing, plotting a way out. She noticed these ceiling tiles and began formulating a plan. Her attempt unfolded in stages. First, she stood on the seat attached to the kiosk, staring intently at the ceiling for several minutes. Perhaps she was assessing its stability or contemplating her next move. After stepping down briefly, she dragged a chair into position, aiming for more stable footing. Climbing onto the chair, she reached up, pushing aside a ceiling tile and hoisting herself into the dark space above. Other inmates in the room watched with a mix of amusement and disbelief, some whispering among themselves, others simply observing the unfolding drama. For a brief moment, Jessica disappeared into the ceiling, her escape seemingly underway, but gravity and flimsy construction had other plans. Within seconds, the ceiling gave way. Debris tumbled down and Jessica's legs dangled precariously as she struggled to maintain her grip. A corrections officer, alerted by the commotion, rushed into the room. He grabbed her legs, attempting to pull her back down. Despite her resistance, she lost her grip and fell, landing headfirst into a trash can below. The can tipped over, spilling both its contents and Jessica onto the floor. The aftermath was swift. Officers secured Jessica and escorted her to a more secure area. Her failed escape added new charges to her already existing list, including escape and vandalism. These were on top of previous charges such as kidnapping, felonious assault, aggravated burglary, aggravated robbery, and grand theft. The surveillance footage of the incident quickly went viral. Media outlets picked up the story, highlighting the absurdity of the situation. Viewers were captivated by the bizarre sequence of events. A woman attempting a bold escape only to crash through a ceiling and land in a trash can. The incident sparked discussions about jail security measures and the lengths to which individuals might go when faced with incarceration. Jessica's story serves as a cautionary tale about the consequences of desperate actions. Her initial alleged crime was severe, involving the victimization of a vulnerable elderly man. The subsequent escape attempt not only failed but also compounded her legal troubles, ensuring a longer and more complicated path through the justice system. In the end, Jessica's leap for freedom resulted in a fall from grace. Quite literally. Up next, Robert Brooks.
The COs did not turn their body cameras on, but a default setting still recorded the attack. The gruesome video showing repeated kicks and punches to Brooks, who was handcuffed and restrained throughout.
Behind the walls of Marcy Correctional Facility, a moment of brutality would unfold, captured on body camera footage that would send shockwaves through the nation. It started like any other routine. Just another day behind bars. But what happened next would shock the public and raise disturbing questions about a system that was supposed to protect and rehabilitate. Robert Brooks, a 43-year-old black man, was transferred to Marcy Correctional Facility from Mohawk Correctional Facility on December 9, 2024. What should have been a routine medical examination would turn into a brutal, fatal incident. Handcuffed, his face already bleeding from prior injuries, Brooks was left at the mercy of the officers who were supposed to be keeping him safe. Instead, they inflicted unspeakable violence. The body camera footage released to the public revealed what happened behind those prison walls. Brooks was compliant, restrained, and vulnerable, yet officers moved in to strike, targeting his face, torso, and groin with no provocation. What was supposed to be a routine medical exam quickly turned into a violent assault. As the beating escalated, the officers went further. They attempted to throw him through a window, and when that failed, they left him motionless on an exam table, unconscious. It wasn't until later that the cause of death was revealed: asphyxia. Due to compression of the neck, Brooks' life was stolen from him in that cold and sterile room. What followed was a disturbing silence from those in power. The footage was a chilling reminder of how broken the system truly is. Officers had been compliant, and yet many walked away without a second glance.
On Monday, another routine step in a somewhat extraordinary case. All 10 officers accused in Robert Brooks' death coming publicly to the courtroom. It's something that former inmates and advocates will tell you is rare when it comes to cases of alleged abuse happening inside state prisons. And there are a lot of eyes on this, including now federal prosecutors.
The video went viral, exposing the terrifying reality inside correctional facilities. Human rights organizations were outraged. This wasn't just another case of prison mistreatment, it was murder. But what made the case even worse? It wasn't an isolated incident. Marcy Correctional Facility had a history of abuse. This wasn't the first time officers had crossed the line. Brooks' death was simply the boiling point.
They are actively pursuing the matter. I have suggested to them that the dispositions I have offered would satisfy the case completely.
New York State Governor Kathy Hochul took action. A full investigation was launched, 13 officers and 1 nurse were fired, and criminal charges followed. But questions remained. How many other incidents like this had been swept under the rug before? The FBI launched its investigation. As the legal process unfolded, people demanded accountability. How could so many officers be involved and yet remain so protected by the system they served? The silence was deafening until the footage couldn't be ignored. On February 20, 2025, 6 officers were charged with murder, manslaughter, and tampering with evidence. Nearly a dozen others faced arrest. The legal fallout was immense, and the charges were a stark reminder of the deep-seated issues within correctional facilities.
I do not take lightly the release of this video, especially in the middle of the holiday season. But as Attorney General, I release these videos because I have a responsibility and duty to provide the Brooks family, their loved ones, and all New Yorkers with transparency and accountability.
The killing of Robert Brooks left a dark mark on New York's prison system. From the body camera footage to the criminal charges, the story isn't just about one man's death. It's about the countless others who have been silenced, ignored, or mistreated behind closed doors. Next up, Terry Whitehead. In April 2024, an unsettling incident unfolded inside Louisville Metro Jail, revealing a disturbing example of excessive force. Body camera footage captured a correctional officer, David Schwartz, violently punching 19-year-old inmate Terry Whitehead in the face while he was handcuffed and seated in a cell. What was supposed to be a routine interaction quickly escalated into an act of aggression caught on camera for the world to see. It all started on April 15, 2024, when Whitehead, who was serving time in the jail, had covered a cell window with toilet paper during a routine security check. This practice was something officers had previously allowed, and Whitehead had no intention of causing trouble. However, Officer Schwartz, who approached Whitehead during the security check, seemed upset. Schwartz confronted Whitehead about the toilet paper, accusing him of spitting on officers. Whitehead calmly explained that he had been using the toilet paper and was unable to remove paper immediately.
I swear to God.
Whitehead, what are you doing, man?
What did I do, bro?
I ain't never had a problem out here. Why you gonna spit on us? Sergeants come around, you know how this is. Just take this
I
stuff.
just had to take a shit, bro.
In a body camera recording, Swartz can be heard asking, "What are you doing, man?" He continued, "I ain't never had a problem out of you. What do you got to spit on us?" Whitehead responded, "I do not give you problems like that, Schwartz bro," attempting to de-escalate the situation. At this point, Whitehead was seated in a cell with his hands cuffed behind his back. He was not resisting or causing any harm, but Swartz, apparently growing increasingly agitated, stepped forward and unexpectedly struck Whitehead in the face. The punch was a violent response to a verbal disagreement, and it shocked everyone who later viewed the footage.
Strings down!
I just need to take it.
That's all she was gonna do.
All I need, bro, you know I don't give y'all problems like that, bro. I do not give you problems like that, Schwartz, bro. You know,
Video, which was taken from Schwartz's body camera, showed Whitehead recoiling from the punch. The young inmate's body jerked backwards, clearly caught off guard by the unprovoked blow. Whitehead, still handcuffed and seated, was defenseless against the attack. After delivering the punch, Schwartz turned and walked out of the cell, slamming the metal door twice against the wall in frustration before heading down the hall. The raw footage was difficult to watch. An officer tasked with maintaining order and safety inside a jail using excessive force against a restrained inmate.
All you had to do was take the strings down, dude.
I'll take him down next time, bro. Y'all ain't here with no problem out of me, bro. I swear to God, bro. You know, second shift, bro. You know, I try my hardest.
Keep your leg down. Keep your leg down.
I try my hardest.
What followed the release of the body camera footage was swift action from the Louisville Metro Correctional Department. Swartz, a 49-year-old probationary officer, was fired. Director Mark Bolton of the Corrections Department explained that Schwartz's actions were completely unacceptable. Bolton described Schwartz's behavior as a fit of rage, noting that not only was the inmate punched, but the officer also caused property damage by slamming the door. Swartz, who had only been employed as a probationary officer for a short period, was deemed unfit for the job and dismissed immediately. In addition to Swartz's firing, another probationary officer, 21-year-old Devin Edwards, was also terminated. Edwards, who was present during the incident, failed to report the use of force and did not seek medical attention for Whitehead after the assault. Edwards had been hired alongside Swartz in 2017, and both officers had been under probation during the incident. Their actions were a failure of duty, and the department took quick action to remove them from their positions. Despite the swift response from the Corrections Department, the incident didn't end there. Whitehead, in response to the assault, filed a civil lawsuit against Swartz and Edwards. The lawsuit accused the officers of excessive force, assault, and battery. In the suit, Whitehead detailed a violent altercation, claiming that he had been pepper sprayed, handcuffed, and beaten while in custody. The suit further stated that Whitehead suffered contusions, swelling, and loss of consciousness from the assault. Though Whitehead was cleared by the department's medical staff, he argued that the severity of his injuries were downplayed, and he sought compensation for medical bills, pain, and suffering. The lawsuit also sought punitive damages for the officers' actions and called for a jury trial to determine the extent of the responsibility.
These officers can come into work and do this without anybody knowing it and write bogus police reports, and nobody oversees that. Something's wrong. Something is terribly wrong.
In addition to the lawsuit, the incident attracted the attention of federal authorities. Both the FBI and the Louisville Metro Police Department's Public Integrity Unit launched investigations into the use of force. The footage, which was released publicly, drew widespread outrage. Many viewed it as a clear case of excessive violence by an officer who is supposed to be serving as a guardian of safety and justice. The aftermath of the incident raised several important questions about the training, oversight, and accountability of correctional officers in U.S. jails and prisons. While it is common for officers to face challenging situations and potentially dangerous individuals, the use of force should always be a last resort. Now, Tracy Brooks. It was supposed to be a normal day inside Richland County Jail. Officer Alexandria Strong was just doing her job, helping with the daily medication rounds. She moved calmly from one inmate to the next, working alongside a nurse. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary until she reached Tracy Brooks. Tracy, 32 years old and already behind bars for other charges, didn't just want her meds that day, she wanted out. And when Officer Strong told her that she had no control over release dates, something snapped. The tension between them rose fast. Words turned into yelling and then violence. The moment Officer Strong tried to grab Tracy's wrist to calm her down and de-escalate the situation, Tracy exploded in rage. She lunged, she punched, she slammed Officer Strong to the cold concrete floor, and she didn't stop there. With raw, brutal force, Tracy kept attacking, punch after punch. At one point, she wrapped her hand around the officer's neck, trying to choke her. It was terrifying to watch, even through the grainy jail surveillance footage. Some inmates tried to help, but by the time backup arrived, Officer Strong was already badly hurt. She had a concussion from the brutal beating. Tracy herself had broken her hand during the attack, likely from the force she used in those punches. The footage was released to the public soon after and went viral. Everyone who watched it felt the same sickening twist in their stomachs. It was real. It was violent. It was a reminder of how dangerous life behind bars can be. Not just for inmates, but for the officers guarding them too. Tracy Brooks was charged with felonious assault, a serious second-degree felony. She was already in trouble before, but now her actions were caught on camera for the world to see. Preliminary hearing was held and the case was sent to a grand jury. The footage was damning. There was no hiding from what she did. And yet, the story goes deeper than just one fight. Richland County Jail, like many others across America, is a place filled with stress, anger, and tension that never truly goes away. Inmates feel trapped, officers feel overwhelmed, and every single day carries the risk of something like this happening again. And Tracy Brooks, she showed no hesitation, no fear, just rage. Tracy's fists left a guard with a concussion, but sometimes the violence comes from the other side of the uniform. The next story takes us to a quiet moment over breakfast, one that ended with a 60-year-old woman slammed to the floor over a carton of milk. Marsha P. Strickland. It was early morning inside Montgomery County Jail. Breakfast had just been served, and the tray in front of 60-year-old Marsha P. Strickland had a small carton of juice. But Marsha didn't want juice that day. She simply asked the officer on duty if she could have milk instead. That request, seemingly innocent, marked the beginning of a moment that would leave her injured, humiliated, and later at the center of a federal lawsuit. What happened next was caught on the jail surveillance camera. The video, later released to the public, showed Marsha and a male corrections officer standing just feet apart. Their conversation wasn't loud. There was no shouting, no threats. Then, without warning, the officer reached for her arm. Marsha instinctively pulled away, perhaps surprised, perhaps scared. The officer didn't hesitate. He grabbed her with both hands, spun her around, and slammed her head to the concrete floor. The sound echoed through the corridor. Marsha hit the ground with a sickening thud. Her body twisted, her head jerked to the side. She stayed there, stunned. The footage didn't show any attempt to check on her. There was no pause for compassion. The encounter lasted seconds, but the damage it did would stretch on for years. After the fall, Martha told jail staff that her shoulder and arm were in pain. She winced. She asked for help, but the jail's nurse, according to Marsha's lawsuit, refused to send her to the hospital. She was offered no scan, no x-ray, just silence. Left to rest in her cell, she was given no answers and no comfort. Her injury was invisible to the eye but grew worse by the hour. It wasn't until the release from jail 2 years later that she discovered the full extent of the damage. Still in pain and unable to move her neck, Marsha visited a doctor on her own. Tests were done. The results were shocking. She had suffered a fractured neck, a broken vertebrae. The force used to bring her down wasn't just excessive, it had been dangerous, life-altering. The incident happened in 2015, but the story didn't make headlines until 2 years later. In 2017, Marsha P. Strickland filed a lawsuit against Montgomery County and the jail. She wasn't just seeking damages, she was demanding accountability. The suit claimed the officer used excessive force and violated her civil rights. It also pointed a finger at the jail's medical staff who had allegedly ignored her cries for help and denied her proper medical care. And then came the video. When the footage was released, it told the story without needing words. There were no shouting, no resistance, just a sudden, forceful takedown of a 60-year-old woman over a breakfast drink. The media picked it up. Viewers were shocked by what they saw. People couldn't believe something could be treated like that, especially for something as simple as asking for milk. Montgomery County officials didn't offer a comment when the lawsuit was first filed. They remained silent even as outrage grew. But in October 2017, news broke that a settlement had been reached. County officials and Marsha's attorney confirmed it. The exact terms of the settlement were kept private, but the message message was clear. The county didn't want this case to go to trial. For Marsha, this settlement wasn't a full victory. The damage had already been done. She continued to live with chronic pain from the fracture. But by taking a stand, she did what many inmates fear to do. She spoke up. She held this system accountable. The officer involved was never named publicly. No criminal charges were brought against him. He remained protected behind the badge. Meanwhile, Marsha's name was known in every headline. Her face was tied to the incident. Her pain was on full display. The moment she pulled away on that morning in 2015 wasn't defiance, it was fear. And what followed should have never happened. Marsha P. Strickland's story is no longer just hers. It belongs to every inmate who's been hurting in silence. It's a warning and a cry for change. From brutal takedowns to jaw-dropping escapes, these weren't just random outbursts. They were cracks in the system ready to collapse. We saw officers cross the line, inmates erupt in fury, and silent screams caught on surveillance that tell the story better than any words could. But here's the question. What moment left you speechless? Was it the restrained chair, the bleach revenge, or something else entirely? Drop your thoughts below. Hit subscribe, tap the bell, and join us for the stories they hope would never be seen, because the cameras did see it, and now so have you.